Russian authorities have approved a mechanism allowing companies to purchase heavy weaponry to defend industrial facilities against drone attacks, the RBC News website reported Thursday, citing sources linked to the defense ministry. I wonder why, like, just imagine that happening in the US, right? Like there would be such a strong expectation that the military would do their job to protect these facilities, right? To protect Russian interests, but literally factories supporting the war effort. And so like industrial facilities. This seems crazy to me that this seems like a clear signal that their ability to protect these industrial facilities, to protect these wartime factories internally is by the military, by defense forces are struggling. If they're going to turn to the companies themselves and say, "Yeah, you guys take care of yourselves." The new system will allow companies to procure anti-aircraft artillery systems, turrets, radar equipment, specialized vehicles, and electronic warfare systems, RBC reported. In order to promptly provide newly formed mobile fire groups with everything they need, the relevant decisions were recently adopted at the state level, one source told RBC. I think what they're trying to say is like I think these mobile fire groups are like the new recruit battalion, frontline battalions that they're throwing together, especially using like foreign troops and mercenaries and things like that. And I guess they're saying like, to make sure that the factories who produce the stuff they need stay up, that we're going to do this. But like, I don't understand why you wouldn't like just defend it yourself or nationalize like these companies. Like I know the economic system in Russia is not like a true capitalist system by any stretch of the imagination. I know it's very oligarchical. The ties between the heads of these companies, the heads of these facilities and whatnot, and the Kremlin are like very, very strong and very special. So I maybe me saying like they should just nationalize it and then defend it in that sort of way would maybe doesn't make sense in this regard. Maybe it sort of already effectively is that. But then making this distinction saying that they can go out and buy their own defenses basically seems sort of pointless. So I don't know. This just seems strange. The move underscores mounting concern among Russian authorities and business leaders over the growing frequency of Ukrainian drone attacks targeting oil refineries, industrial sites, and other strategic infrastructure across European Russia. What does it mean, European Russia? I guess that means just like the western side of Russia. Like my understanding is that successful drone attacks have happened further deeper into Russia, right? Even at Moscow, which is pretty deep into Russia. I mean, that's not right on the border or anything. So maybe this is a way for like them to try and appeal to foreign businesses more. Maybe they're trying to sell this to businesses that like aren't necessarily being directly targeted by the Ukrainian forces or whatever. So maybe like industrial facilities that aren't producing anything for the war effort, but are just producing like toys or something that's used domestically by the citizenry, right? The issue was publicly raised Monday during a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and Alexander Shokhin, head of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. And head of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, aka the leader of the oligarchs. Large companies are certainly taking steps, at least all conscientious major companies are, to protect both their facilities and the areas where they operate. But some issues still need to be resolved, Shokhin told Putin, according to a Kremlin transcript. These include mechanisms for supplying weapons, not only 7.62mm firearms, but also heavier weapons systems. That includes various electronic warfare systems, laser installations, and other types of weaponry, he said. I just can't help but think of the idea of like a corporate war. Like maybe the first true business war is going to happen in Russia, right? You have these companies who are competing against each other, assuming that there is some semblance of competition in the Russian economy. They each buy their own arms and basically form their own little paramilitaries, and then they go off and fight each other for market dominance. Like I really doubt that would actually flesh out like that, but it's a funny thought. It's a very dystopian thought. I think there may have been like a Black Mirror episode or something like that on that. He also asked authorities to permanently assign reservists to specific industrial sites, complaining that personnel were frequently reassigned elsewhere. RBC reported that most regions in European Russia are already forming new mobile fire groups consisting of reservists, volunteers from regional BARS units, and employees of private companies. maybe the mobile fire groups is not only like frontline stuff, but maybe it's like domestic protection, like groups that I guess protect like sites and these industrial facilities inside Russia. Like I would imagine that most of the attacks that happen from Ukraine on sites inside Russia are done like remotely, like using drones and stuff. So I don't really understand what they mean by mobile fire groups. I would think that those would mostly be like anti-aircraft stuff. It would be like electronic warfare stuff, like lasers and those like EMP guns that knock drones out of the sky and stuff. Not so much like dudes with AK-47s and whatnot. I don't think special forces of Ukraine, Ukrainian special forces or whatever, are making their way into Russia for actual ground assaults very often. To speed up deployment, weaponry purchased by private firms will reportedly be transferred directly to military units tasked with protecting industrial and civilian infrastructure, one source said. It says, like, to speed up deployment, weaponry purchased by private firms will reportedly be transferred directly to military units tasked with protecting industrial and civilian infrastructure, one source said. So, like, are these firms, these companies, these owners of these factories, like, purchasing arms so that the military can come in and use them? Like, you'd think if the military is coming in to protect them, like, they would already have their own arms. This seems, I don't understand the full context of all this. Previously, private companies were only allowed to purchase passive defense systems through the open market or the Industry and Trade Ministry. Procurement of light firearms for private security personnel was handled through Russia's National Guard. Yeah, I would imagine that getting your hands on small arms was never a problem, right? So clearly this new change in policy has nothing to do with your ability to get a hold of pistols or AK-47s or anything like that, right? This has to do with air defense systems, with laser systems, EMP type stuff to knock drones out of the sky, basically, and potentially planes. Although military planes don't seem to be used as much in this conflict as other conflicts you've seen around the world because of the parity that you see, the military parity you see between Ukraine and Russia. They both have such robust anti-aircraft systems that like it becomes very risky, very costly, and very expensive to try and go in and do some sort of traditional bombing campaign with like a fighter jet or a bombing plane or whatever, right? That those planes cost millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, right? And if they get knocked out of the sky, that's very expensive. While each little drone is cost $1,000 or whatever it costs them to make it, maybe even less. And so it's just far more cost effective. It just makes more sense to use those instead of these military planes. Separately, a Pantsir SMDE air defense system appeared to have been installed atop Moscow's 42-story Nordstar Tower skyscraper. Video published by military analyst Yan Matviev on Thursday showed a helicopter lowering the system onto the roof. Okay, I can only imagine the absolute nightmare that it would be, like, logistically, like locally, wherever that tower is, and they have this air defense system installed, just to you have to design it so that it doesn't shoot other civilian buildings in the area, but that it only can aim at. Like, I just have a feeling, like, I mean, I'm sure these things are maybe a bit easier to actually get going in Russia, especially in a time of war. But maybe my context on this is just too American. But the idea of getting something like that set up here and like getting all your T's crossed and your I's dotted properly would be a nightmare. The pro-war Telegram channel Vony Osvedomitel said the system is specifically designed to counter drones. Its combat module can carry up to 48 small-sized Gvozdz missiles with a range of 7 kilometers, 4.3 miles, or standard 95 YA-6 missiles with a range of up to 20 kilometers, 12.4 miles. Nordstar Tower is among Moscow's tallest office buildings and houses major tenants, including state oil giant Rosneft, which leases nearly half the building's space. I guess now that I think about it, in Israel, for instance, they have air defense systems all over the place in all the major cities, in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and Haifa, and they have them interspersed and amongst civilian buildings, on top of them, in between them, buried underground, in hidden places as well. And so, I guess maybe it isn't that uncommon. I guess there is sort of a precedent for this, and maybe the logistics behind it are a little bit more easy or a bit more solved than I would think. But yeah, this just seems weird. I just don't understand why the military wouldn't come in and do this. Like, assuming that there is such a heavy connection between like military industry and many entities in the Russian economy through oligarchy type systems and the Russian Kremlin, that they wouldn't come in and just defend them themselves. Like, you'd think that Russia and the military would have the interest to do that, and you would think that they would have the ability to do that. Maybe it's a bit more symbolic than I'm giving it credit for. Maybe it's just so like these private companies, like on a luxury apartment building or something like this Nord Star Tower, um, so they can like show to their tenants like we're doing our best. We're spending money on this. You don't have as much to worry about. You'd think this would be in the in the responsibility of the Russian military and Russia in general, the state, not so much the private companies or whatever. But interesting.